Oh, oh, Hariom, and greetings from Niagara Falls. I have an older sister, and her oldest child just graduated from high school. He's going to university now. And so they had come to Niagara Falls, and tonight we had a surprise party for his graduation. Now, the restaurant where this graduation party was happening was not in the best area of the city we were in. And so when we got out of the car and Shuka and Vyasa were with me and Sheila, they were observing that there was a lot of people who were sleeping in tents or under umbrellas. There was a lot of trash here and there. And so Vyasa was asking about why this is. Why are they sleeping outside? Why is there litter all over the place? And I was trying to share with them that they don't have a home to sleep in, like you and I have a home to sleep in. And so they're tired. And so whatever stuff they have, whether it's a water bottle or a pair of shoes, they're too tired to put that in its proper place. They don't have a proper place to put that. So it's just left on the sidewalk or the street. The reason I'm narrating this experience that just happened an hour and a half ago with all of you, those who are privileged have a greater responsibility in the area that they're privileged. I've shared with all of you, it was my privilege to live in an ashram, and so I try to share that with everyone. For us, we are privileged to live in a home or to live underneath a roof. We are privileged to have a garbage can and recycling bins and so on. And so we have a greater responsibility to utilize and spread this privilege. This is the vision of loving Earth, our community, to make us more aware of how privileged we are in this specific sense of our relationship with the environment. When I was growing up, I often heard that the condition of your car is indicative of the condition of your mind. That if your car is chaotic, then your mind is chaotic too. How many of you agree with this sentiment? The people with their hands up is because your cars are like that. And so the point is to make your cars more organized because it helps your mind be more organized. And a good way to be more organized with your cars, really with articles or stuff, is to use whatever you have fully. If you have a sponge, use it until you can't use it. If you have a soap bar, if you have a detergent, whatever it is, use it fully so that you don't bring more into your horizon that makes matters chaotic. And this is part of why in our running from the mind community or engagement this year, every time you train in the form of completing 21 miles, that you should share a pair of shoes. Your shoes, your neighbor's shoes, or you buy shoes. This is well connected in utilizing your privilege and being organized with articles. And all of this will be well tied together now in a really awesome workshop with the focus of the conscious closet. I was not supposed to be part of this workshop because of family responsibilities, but I'm happy that I am. Team, please continue.
Hariom everyone, Hariom Vivekji. So many of us have heard Nina's voice on the podcast and the amazing newsletters we get, so many other different posters we get. Like I my very somewhat first few memories of Nina was she was my roommate on one of the yatras, and I could like feel her sitting on the bed nearby and tuk 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 something going on. And now I know there is amazing level of seva that Nina does, and just she's a social worker. She's an ardent seeker who I feel it is like someone who just wouldn't give up because that's something should not be give up upon. Nina help us understand uh, about closets.
Thank you for the very sweet introduction, Zui. Hariom Vivekji, Hariom community. It's always really nice to see so many of you, especially on Sunday evening, to prioritize this time together and just be together in Loving Earth. I often think about how our Loving Earth community is such an example of, I mean, every single lesson we've learned in our courses and other communities, it's a way for us to practice and just take from everything we're learning here in this space, face to face, and just apply it in a really tangible, active way and see real results. And I think that supports us in developing and deepening further. So excited to be here. It's also a little bit out of my comfort zone. I usually am sharing about like mental health or other types of topics that are more related to working with our youth. So I was very flattered to be described as a fashionista on our poster. And I think I'll add that to my LinkedIn profile in the future. Not sure how that will help professionally, but that was an accomplishment that I will fully take to heart. So gratitude to the Loving Earth team. When you think of fast fashion, so quick note, we know each other well. It's going to be a little bit interactive. So if you can just be ready to type in the chat, that would make me feel more comfortable as I explore a topic that is close to my heart, but also new to me in sharing. When I say fast fashion, what comes up for you? What words come up for you? Fast fashion. Zara, latest trends, consumerism, mannequins. Yeah. Shein. Shine? I actually never have said that out loud. So clothes that don't last. Yes. Okay. Lots of good, something you buy and wear a few times before discarding, wanting to look good, cheap. This is a really, like, actually all of these really succinctly describe some of the things that we actually would use to define fast fashion. How would you, if I say sustainable fashion, what words would you associate with sustainable fashion? Quality, low footprint, upcycled, durable, ethically made, kinder on all. So I'm hearing something, old is gold, redesigned, upcycled, back to basics, work for many occasions. So there's a versatility there, longevity, cruelty-free. I'm noticing this trend that it's not only about how it impacts like the physical planet, but also like all of the people who are involved in producing clothes. And I think those are sort of themes that we might see emerge as we both look at the problem of fast fashion, but also look at some potential solutions. So that's how I want us to like dive into this topic together. We'll spend a little bit of time thinking about the problem itself and spend a little bit of time organizing around like a framework for like, where do we go from here, right? And so this is a big topic that can't be encapsulated only in just an hour. Each of these different threads, even when I was meeting with the Loving Earth team, we were noticing could be full workshops and experiences unto themselves. So just keep that in mind. We're going to do our best. We're just going to move through. I'm going to share my slides and we'll keep diving in. I think something to share is that I started caring about this a lot when I realized that where I invest my money, particularly in the clothes I wear, also can reflect the values that I have. And I think that's something that we've learned a lot in our Chiang Mai Niagara community is how do we align our values with our actions and our words so that we can really live a fully integrated life. Okay, so we're going to do some true and false type situations, some questions and answers, just as a warm-up, but also to get a sense of the problem. Okay, friends, how many tons of textiles do you think are landfilled in the United States every year? How many tons of textiles? Just give a guess of numbers. I didn't know some of this until I started exploring in preparation. 100,000 tons, 1 million tons, 100 million tons. Okay, so it is in between 1 million and 100 million. Annually, 11.3 million tons of textiles are landfilled every year. 85% of those are landfilled and incinerated, of textile waste is landfilled or incinerated in general. That's quite a bit. Getting even more tactile, and like this is what made it real for me, the average American throws away about 81 pounds of clothes every year. What? That's, I think somewhere I read is like, that's the weight of an average 11-year-old. So imagine throwing like a child's worth of like clothing away every single year. Huge, immense. So that's one where, like, again, getting a little taste of the scope of the problem. Okay. Usually we think, okay, we got to be minimalist. We got to donate clothes, get rid of excess, live within our means. What? So we donate. We donate to a Goodwill. We donate to another charity shop, another thrift store. What percent of secondhand clothes, secondhand donations are actually sold in those stores? 2%, 15%, 5%. Okay, 10%. I think everyone's intuition here is pretty correct. A really low percentage of what is actually donated to a place like Goodwill is actually sold. So just 10 to 30%, depending on what country you're looking at, or like the study that you're looking at, of donations are actually resold. The rest are landfilled or sent to global South countries. And so this means that some of the studies that are in the space share that 70% of global donations end up in African countries in particular. And this is just a snapshot. And I find it a very powerful snapshot of some of these piles of landfilled clothes. So just to zoom in a little bit. Oh, okay. Can people see the slides I'm sharing or no? Good. Okay, I just wanted to double check. Okay. So what happens is when things aren't sold, they're actually baled together, like big bales of clothes, often organized by women's clothes or men's clothes like that. And then they're shipped to places like Uganda, for example, like bales of hay, bales of clothes. And then when these bales of clothing actually arrive in the port, people can, they're auctioned off. People can place a bid on that. And so the thing is that when someone is a vendor in an African country is bidding on this bale of clothing, they're assuming that like there's a solid percentage of those clothes that could be resold, like maybe a good Gap sweatshirt or something like that, something that has like a little bit of value that can then make it into another secondary market. However, increasingly with the advent of fast fashion, you know, things that are cheap, disposable, fall apart pretty easily, the quality of clothes in that bale is much, much lower. So that means there's an even smaller percentage that a vendor in an African country can actually resell. Because like, let's face it, if we don't want to wear something that's falling apart, other people in the world don't want to wear that either, right? Like that's a pretty big thing to ask. And so oftentimes these clothings are just like, again, make it into these massive landfills and have impacts on both the earth and the water that surround them. This is to also consider, there's like a layer here of, if we want to tie a little bit of colonialism to it, the countries that are consuming are typically what we, if we broadly want to call it global north countries, we can. And typically the countries that are producing the garments are countries that have experienced the effects of colonialism and colonization, and also the countries that are having to like deal with this waste are also those countries as well. So think a lot about, when we think of fast fashion, we are thinking of the earth, but we're thinking of where resources are extracted, both in terms of water and land, in terms of production of clothing, labor in the process of making those clothes. And then when we get rid of those clothes, where do they go? They're out of our sight, but they land up in many other places. Okay, speaking of water, how much water does it take to make a cotton shirt? How many gallons? Let me give you the metric. How many gallons of water does it take to make a cotton shirt? This blew my mind. 50 gallons, 1,000 gallons, 100. Okay. Yeah, it's actually, Shrika, we're actually a little bit closer to 1,000 gallons. About 713 gallons of water is required to make one conventional cotton shirt. That's about enough water to sustain a person for 900 days. If you look at some estimates of how much water it takes to produce a pair of jeans, it's about 2,000 gallons of water. So just imagine in turn how many days that could sustain someone in terms of their water needs and capacity. Again, I was just like sitting there like, what in the world? What in the world? What? Especially since we consider that our community has even raised resources towards supporting folks who lack an access to clean water. Yes, Sudarshan, especially with the water shortages in so many places too. But it also becomes personal. In Bharat in particular, it deeply impacts many of our farmers. In Maharashtra in particular, which we often consider as like the kind of the cotton belt of the country, since 2015, every day, 3 farmers a day on average die by suicide. And how does that connect to cotton production? So something to consider is that genetically modified cotton has been introduced in Bharat. And the one benefit of this varietal of cotton is that it's more resistant to certain pests that can plague the crop. However, it does make it a more water-intensive crop, so more irrigation resources are needed, and sometimes more fertilizer resources are needed. And more than that, that seed, it costs about like 4 times as much as other varietals of cotton. So many of the smaller farmers, in which, looking at the cotton industry in particular in Bharat, like it's a lot of smaller landowners who are cultivating it, people are taking out lots of debt. And in that debt, as it cycles and the broader impacts of extreme weather and climate change impact harvest, I mean, the broader like market of cotton, people are really are in an essential chokehold, and some of the impacts of this broader global cycle of production and processing. So cotton, something that we think is a natural fiber, is a sustainable fiber. It has a darker side to it. And we also see that in the United States with the history of cotton and like also chattel slavery in the United States as well, how cotton was produced. It isn't to say that cotton is bad. Obviously, it makes clothing that is longer lasting, that is lighter, and allows us to move through the world in a more comfortable way. And it isn't to say that like, polyester is better, right? Polyester is made from fossil fuels at the end of the day. And a lot of those microfibers, as we have heard in the news, make it into the water as we like rewash our clothes again and again and again and again. So we will get into more of the solution side of things like a little bit later. So if you're like having a little bit of like, oh my gosh, we're really focusing on the negative side of things, it's okay. We're going to take a deep breath and we're going to move into some ways of alternatives and thinking about this. But I did want to highlight specifically the impact in Bharat and fast fashion. And this is not even in thinking about the like in Bangladesh, the Rana Plaza disaster, wherein all of these fast fashion companies produced in poor labor conditions and the building collapsed and so many people died in that. So we're not even thinking of that aspect, but just this one glimpse. And then I was also shocked by this, and Uzbekistan in particular. That was another country where a lot of cotton production has happened. You can see the impact of how this freshwater lake, one of the fourth, I think it was like the fourth largest in the region, shrank from 2000 to 2014. It like disappeared. A whole giant lake disappeared. And it was all related to how the land resources and the water resources were managed in relationship to the cotton industry. And we know that the textile industry and then like clothing is mostly what this cotton is being used for. So just to kind of like really put it in a stark way, the sort of impact on our environment. Okay, true or false, an expensive item is more likely to be sustainable. Cool. We are a smart group. Probably was a leading question too. And a great example of this is Zara. Here, I went on there. I'm like, okay, what does something at Zara cost? Here's a $129 dress. $129 is not a small amount of money. Like I'm a grad, just finished grad school. I'm like, oh, okay. If I'm making a decision to purchase this dress, it is an investment of a kind. However, there's no guarantee actually from Zara. Zara is like one of the initiators of the fast fashion movement, meaning producing new types of clothing every single week, pushing them out in stores, being produced at much, much cheaper rates. So just think, cost does not equal sustainable or ethical. I also tend to boycott Zara on ethical means because of their connection to like the genocide in Palestine right now. So clothes have a deep, deep connection to our values and how we show up in the world. Okay, that was just a glimpse. Many of you also know many different things about fast fashion and how you relate to fashion. And so that's why I want us to hop into breakout rooms for maybe like 10-ish minutes. And I have 3 discussion questions kind of touching on 3 different directions, okay? And you can dive into whatever question that feels most accessible to you. Some of them will feel more relevant, some of them might feel less relevant. So 1, what are stories or stereotypes that you have about buying secondhand or reusing clothes, either currently or in the past or in your family? What do you do with your old Indian clothes? We have a lot of them and we wear them maybe not that often, depending on who we are and where we live. What are the norms you observe in your South Asian community about re-wearing Indian clothes? And then 3rd, just if we want to like connect this to like Vedanta in a deeper, broader sense, what Vedantic concepts do you think could apply to how we consider a relationship to fast fashion? So whatever question feels resonant to you, or if you want to tackle multiple, go ahead, but we'll hang out here for about 10 minutes. I'm curious what topics came up for all of you in your discussion groups. And so I'm just going to ask, okay, we're going to start with like room 1. Someone who is in room 1, what is something that came up for your group? And I can also gently tell people, but if you feel comfy speaking and raising your hand, that's also super and welcomed. I'm going to call Sudarshan. Sudarshan, what came up in your group?
Yeah, so a lot of good stuff came up in our group, like such as uh like starting the regifting culture by yourself. If it's that if the opposite culture is currently there, and there's a lot of opposition or stigma around it, that's one thing. Or restyling older clothes for others, to bring like a newness to them, and learning the sewing skills, and like but yeah, those are some things, and especially with like for me personally, it was going to India and then realizing that everyone was going to give me like a different shade of the same kurta, and I would come back with all these clothes that I didn't expect to have, and so like it was just like weddings, it could be like letting people know what type of gifts you want them to give you, or what type of like don't buy me new clothes. If you're going to give me clothes, re-give me clothes that you don't want. So those sort of things are like measures you would take.
That's really, I appreciate you sharing that, like how to express your values around gift giving and gifts and things like that. Okay, room 2. Sapna?
Ariel. Our group talked quite a bit about kind of how we try to responsibly give away clothing. And one thought that came up around the group was particularly with Indian clothes, taking them back to India and trying to very personally either give it to someone, or someone in the group who I hope can share in the chat as well, mentioned an organization that textile recycles in India, where she'll collect from friends and family also to take it back. We talked also about trying to live more simply here, not bringing, things that we don't need into our home. Kind of this idea of fast fashion being like Preyas thinking, instant gratification, trying to match current trend rather than something that's longer term, good for us and good for the planet as well.
Cool. I appreciate you sharing that. And also, like, it's making me think how much wisdom is in the group already around how to thoughtfully engage with fast fashion. And the personal aspect, I feel like this is something that I appreciate in our friendship, is that if we are repurposing and regifting to each other, we're like seeing eye to eye that this is a thing that is ending up in your hand, right? Like, it's that way we can avoid what's happening in these African countries where like things are just being shipped there and left. There's a personal element to it. Cool. Thank you, Sapna. Simi in room 3. I'm curious what came up for y'all.
Hariom. We talked about Indian clothes quite a bit as well, and I find it interesting that we have this norm, as sort of was suggested, that all of our outfits only should be worn once, because like we should like look different or like have a new outfit for each occasion. But obviously that's a bit problematic, and so we talked about ways to work around that. For example, giving or like having some sort of a rotation service among a group of friends, where if everyone does want new clothes, you don't buy new ones, but you can exchange, or altering and learning how to sew so that you can do that yourself, and sharing clothes with other people. And then it was also mentioned that there might be some temples or places, like one of the organizations that was shared in the chat, that can accept those kinds of clothing. And so you can feel better about donating them if you do decide that you're done with them, but then doing your best to really wear clothes to their fullest extent before donating, and not just giving it up because you feel done with it, but really using it for its full purpose.
So getting really real about our intention behind it. That makes so much sense. And I like the idea of thinking about like a circle and a circle of sharing. That's very powerful. Thank you, Simi. Priyanka and Rupa, would love to hear from both of you.
Yeah, so I think we had a lot of great discussions on several of the questions. I know the first one, we noticed a pattern on how, typically like older generations are not really seeing eye to eye with the whole idea of reusing, repurposing clothes like between people, like be it like through thrifting or like just wearing used clothes in general. And we're seeing like in like me going to college, like I'm seeing like that's more common, like the idea of thrift shops and just reusing each other's clothes or like borrowing clothes. So we talked about like the differences in terms of that. And then also in terms of Indian clothes, obviously we do the best we can to, you know, take clothes back to India, see who we can give it to. Obviously we did discuss that there's a little bit of uncertainty on where the right places are, like where the optimal places are to actually give your clothes, because we want to make sure they don't end up like the picture you showed to all of us. So that was a couple things we discussed. And then yeah, like I also wanted to share that in my college, like I really liked this one initiative that they did was so business professional business casual clothing is something that's very common because I go to a business school. And for college students that are basically broke, trying to, you know, save money as much as they can, they had this initiative where they had a closet full of clothes, and they had time slots where people could just come and take them for free. So yeah, that was a good initiative that I observed, and I hope that's continued. So yeah, just we shared a lot of ideas and branched out in a lot of ways.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, I don't want to add anything. Just the generational differences are very obvious here with what I'm used to, and I'm not used to thrifting and buying you know, old stuff so and I'm getting used to that idea now, and I see the value in that. Learning a lot from what she's experiencing in college and her way of shopping. So it's a learning process for me.
But you know, I do want to offer that this isn't just like people who are caregivers are like backwards and don't know how to thrift, and younger people are like super with it in terms of secondhand stuff. Like there's so many ways that I think I've learned from people on both ends of like the age spectrum, and like of how to like make things last longer. Like, okay, I know some of the J chicks I've worked with do not know how to sew a button back onto a shirt or to like repair a piece of clothing. Whereas like, you know, there was someone in my dance school whose mom like flew in to help her hem her like dance costume by hand, right? Like that's like the level of difference sometimes when we're thinking of skills. It's not just that like, there's also things that like our generation just doesn't know how to do or operate either. And also, interestingly, even though like Gen Z values sustainability more, like if you look at most surveys compared to Millennial or Gen X, purchasing wise, their actions are not always lining up to the values of sustainability, because we're seeing things like Shein and Temu and like all of those like those apps that make it really easy to shop. Ruchi, I saw that look you just gave Priyanka. I'm not calling anyone out. I was not called in to do an intervention of any kind. But I just wanted to share some of those things because you were naming the intergenerational piece. Okay, I'm going to keep it chugging along with some of the rest of the presentation, and I'm reading and appreciating everything that's coming up in the chat, both in the ways that families are remixing across generations some of the clothes, the ways that we're thinking about clothing having extra meaning and become well loved the more you wear them, the way it saves mental energy when you can repeat outfits, the ways we're deciding to refuse new clothes too. So these are all things that we're doing. We see Vivekji literally wearing the same thing every time he sees us. He seems to be doing okay, I would say, you know. And these are some of the things that you shared are also things that I'm going to touch really briefly on in the rest of this presentation. Hold on, I have to go back to screen sharing. So you're just hearing me ad lib across all of this. Okay. So this is a gentle framework for like how I think about my purchasing decisions and like how I express fashion. And it's going to be really intuitive. There are like 6 R's. The biggest thing at the core of it is refusing. The biggest thing we all know, you've been to all of these other Loving Earth workshops. It's like not acquiring new stuff in the first place is the biggest solution to fast fashion and its environmental impact and the labor impact. We do not need more stuff. In our little breakout, when all of you were in breakouts, Anvita and I were talking about how people have been purchasing things at like 4 times the rate that they used to, purchasing clothing in particular, 4 times as much clothes as they purchased even 10, 15 years ago. So that's something to think about. Refuse. Yeah. And then many items are only worn 7 to 10 times before being tossed. And the average person keeps clothing for half as long as they did 15 years ago. So we're buying more and we're wearing them less. That's sort of the takeaway there. Oh, okay, hold on before we see Sapna. Repurpose. So repurpose, we can take fabric that we have when things have really lived its course and turn them into something else. And so last year, Sapna and we were making garlands for my art exhibit, and a lot of it was fabric scraps we had from other projects. Some of it from perhaps from clothes, some of it from other places, but it was a way to take something that already existed and turn it into something new that wasn't clothing. So stuff that has lived beyond its life. You might have seen it, like I've also, like old t-shirts from high school get second lives as dust rags and things like that, really using every inch of it, that cotton shirt that took so much water to make, into something else. Repair, that's also something that kind of came up. And it can look like a couple of different things. So the one I'm showing you is things that I've done on my own. I got into mending spree. So you can see my attempts at darning, attempts at visible mending on a pair of jeans and a sweater. Like I'm not some paragon of slow fashion, like virtue out here. Like, yes, because of financial reasons and a variety of things, sometimes I do purchase fast fashion items, but like this is a sweater I've had for about 7 or 8 years, and it is in my favorite color and it fits me really well, and it makes me sad at the thought of giving it up. So I decided, like, what can I do to repair some of the holes that developed? Or like a pair of jeans, I'm like, this fit me really well. I actually don't think they sell this version of jeans anymore. Like, what can I do to make it something that is still Nina-ish, but also teaches me something new? But if visible mending is not sort of your vibe, there's obviously so many other ways repair can work. Places like LL Bean, for example, I have it on my to-do list to send my old snow boots in that need to get resoled. They'll do that repair for a small fee. A lot of places like Patagonia or even like REI, for certain products through their worn wear program, you can get them replaced, fixed, mended in different ways. So some of these companies that are more aligned to environmental values are also offering ways to extend the longevity of our items. And remix, okay, so someone in the Loving Earth team said, Nina, we want to see what you actually do to do this in your wardrobe. And so here's an embarrassing set of pictures of me taking this pink suit that I absolutely love, that I thrifted somewhere, and wearing it 8 different ways, kind of, over the last decade. So you see selfies in the work bathroom at events, blah, blah, blah. So that's your indulgent for whoever asked that of me. Remix, what are the ways you can break things apart and put them back together? What is the difference between Indian wear and Western wear? Can you blur that line? Can you layer it? Can you tuck something in? Can you deconstruct it? And then I guess an example of how I do it with Indian clothes is like, here's a sari that I wear. In one version, I'm wearing it with a dress. That was like the pink thing is a dress, and I wore the sari like a dress. Another one, I'm wearing it with a crop top. So 2 examples, again, it feels very awkward to show my own photos. I'm moving it along. I'm wondering how you might remix things in your wardrobe in whatever way. So even extending the life of your clothes by just 9 more months of active use can reduce the carbon, water, and waste footprint by 20 to 30%. That's like an astounding thing we can do. Yes, this is 100% structural. Like companies should not be pumping out 52 weeks worth of clothes in a year. Like that should not be happening. People should be compensated for their labor at a living wage, even in the US, for making clothes that are beautiful. But there's certain things we can do, and it's like giving a lot more life to what we already have. And recycling carefully. Not everything can be recycled well, and that's why things get in landfilled or incinerated. It takes a little more time to find the places in your city to appropriately dispose of certain kinds of clothing items. But even as Sapna had shared, like the personal aspect of identifying a person on the other end of the recycling factor, like giving the object to someone else who can continue to appreciate and use it, extends the life of that item more. Again, like with all of the things we're experiencing and learning in our courses, like when it becomes personal, it becomes that much more real. And reassess, and you could call it reassess, you could call it replace. You know, I think I read somewhere that the average person only really wears maybe 40% of their wardrobe. Reassess, what do you actually have in your closet right now? Do you know? Like, do you know what's at the back of it? So reassess, and then also reassess where you purchase things. And this is again another thing that takes legwork. And then, you know, after this workshop, probably sometime this week, I have a couple of resources for like, how do you sort of try to figure out what is an environmentally sustainable place to purchase a thing if you are purchasing something new, okay? Right, like if you're not thrifting, if you do have to purchase something new, what should you be looking for? It can be tricky, right? And again, fast fashion is there, and sometimes we do have to avail of it. Our bodies can change really rapidly and dramatically, whether, you know, for stressors in our lives or like if our kiddos are growing really fast, sometimes things are urgent. But more often than not, many of us are people of certain kinds of means where it just requires a little bit of effort and time to identify an alternative place that has sort of ethics and sustainability practices that are more in line with the things that we value. So both reassess what you have, like you might find something new that you forgot existed in your own wardrobe. It happens to me all the time. And then you can think about like, where are the actual gaps? So that, just to rewind so you can see it all in one place again, are just like some of the words I use to assess like how to approach my own fashion journey, and be more caring, more loving to our earth. Okay. We had a lot of like rich discussion and sort of sharing back, and I'm so appreciative of those insights. But if there are any questions or any thoughts people want to share more broadly, I encourage you to raise your hand. We can probably take like 2, maybe 3 at most right now. And obviously I'm available over email if you want to continue the dialogue further, but just pausing there. Any questions, reflections that you feel like we need to put like voice out there? I'll try to answer. I don't know, but I can also nod my head in a very affirming way as you share, and I don't know the answer. Beautiful. Vinita ji.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
Thank you, Nina. It was wonderful. Anyways, I was just going to say that, you know, we take a lot of stuff to India when we go there, but an alternative is to take stuff to Mexico when you're there. Whenever we go on holidays to Mexico, we have taken bags of clothing for children, footwear, and miscellaneous, like even towels and things like that. Shirts, towels, and people are more than happy to take those things. So I thought, you know, when people go on holidays or if they go for weddings or whatever to Mexico or any Caribbean islands and things like that, I mean, it's a good place to distribute items that are no longer being used. Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you for sharing that. Yeah, that's another tip, right? Because maybe we're not able to go to Bharat all the time, but perhaps we're going to other places where it could be personally valuable. Sapna?
Just an anecdote I wanted to share, since you mentioned Uganda specifically. When I was in college, I went to Uganda for a school project, and I remember the team that I was with, they were playing this sort of scavenger hunt type game where we were getting points if we found in these public markets a t-shirt with one of our high school logos on it or a hat with our college logo on it, which, you know, at the time felt funny, but really if we step back and think, why are those things ending up there, right? It struck me when you were sharing today, Nina, that it's really sad that we have that. The other thing I wanted to share was I've been noticing more and more, and I think someone mentioned it's likely tied to social media and kind of wanting to share events more publicly, but bachelorette parties and weddings now have color themes and specific wardrobes that people have to wear. I mean, not only does it put a lot of, I feel, exclusivity to things, like pressure on buying things sometimes or going beyond your means, but also, you know, buying more things. So where possible, you know, just an appeal to try to reduce that where we can in our circles by talking about how we also don't like to be at events like that, maybe change the culture in our friend circles as well, to not request people to wear something that they might only wear once.
Yes, yes, so many requirements, so many requirements. That's such a good point. And also highlights on the social media aspect, which drives a lot of these increasingly faster and faster cycles of garment production. Neelamji.
Hariom, Neemaji, Hariom, everybody. So I just wanted to share, you know, when my kids were in the I think in second grade, they pretend to go in their studies with their second grade teacher all over the world. And one time they go to India, you know, like they learn a tad bit about it. So I donated the boys' clothes and the girls' clothes to my teacher, you know, because there were 5 second grades in the school where my little kids were going. And I gave my bindis and all also to them. And, you know, like the bangles and all of the children, of the girl. And then the boy, it was just kurta pajama, you know, the Indian. So the children, the boys also, they put bindi on their forehead and they went for lunch and all, you know, like they enjoyed it. And I also made like mango lassi, but I gave little to them and I took mango for them, you know. So anyway, we're talking about clothes. And then the second thing, when my daughter was 13, since it was all women, you know, I had only ladies' clothes. So all my clothes, like they were good, you know, I took them out, and to each one in the goodie bag, they got an Indian outfit. So they got the goodie bag as soon as they came, and then all of them wore, so all 13 girls, they wore the Indian clothes, and then I took them to Amma's over here I'm in Washington, D.C., so to an Indian restaurant. So that was their thing for them. And, you know, like a treat. So I recycled, they got the clothes, and I gave bindi and all also like that. So it was good. And then as adults, I've given to so many American people too. Like they love to have our clothes, you know. So like if you have that kind of friendship, like how Priyanka ji was saying, you know, like we wear each other's clothes and all. So the friends don't mind because
that's so amazing. Like
yeah,
you're sharing all these different avenues of sharing clothes.
Yeah, so they don't
Very
mind.
powerful.
Yeah, because thank you.
Absolutely. I think we have a few announcements to ensure that we wrap up on time, right, Zui?
Okay. So thank you very much, Nina. And now my brain is going all over with all the things I can reuse different clothes. So I very much appreciate that. One quick announcement: from next month, we'll have to re-register for Zoom. We will not be using Luma. So keep track of that. You'll get an email or on WhatsApp. If you're not part of the WhatsApp group, definitely join. People are sharing things on it, meaningful things that they do after that. So please do. And did you feel like, Nina, as if build a sustainable bridge to your heart today? Did you feel that? Right? The way she was connecting, the way she was making it work. Okay, I'm making a plug here somewhere. She comes as a guest teacher to enhance AWAD training. So if you have not considered applying, learn from tricks and tools from Nina how to connect with her audience. So please look into enhanced AY training. It's just appreciate Nina. Thank you for connecting with us. Holy. I'll end with an O.
Yes, three Shantis actually.
Oh,
Okay,
three
and
Shantis. Go ahead, Nina, you go ahead.
okay, just again, gratitude to all of you for prioritizing being here, sharing so much in the chat. Like I have to properly sit with this after to absorb everything that you've shared. There's so much value in crowdsourcing this. Like these are things that are so realistic, and I feel really inspired by that. And the thing I think a lot about is, again, what you wear can be a reflection of how you want to be in the world and what you want to show up in the world. So also doesn't have to be minimalist. I am as far from minimalist as one could be. So I just want to also offer that kind of encouragement to any stereotypes you might have around sustainability and what sustainability can aesthetically look like. Okay, again, reach out over email if you want to chat more, always available. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Hariom, everyone. Be well.